Hey everyone, Chang here and welcome to my channel. For today's video, I'm going to go over again something that I find quite entertaining. Those sort of math magic kind of situation where basically you find a set of rules and all of a sudden it makes your life computing certain special type of equations or certain special type of, I guess you could say, problems a lot easier. Let's look at this. Today we're going to be focusing on squaring numbers between 40 to 60. Now the other video that I did was squaring numbers that end in 5. Notice that there are special rules. This one has a special rule as well. This one's a little more complicated, but I'm sure you guys got it. Now, the reason it's squaring numbers between 40 and 60, and this is 40 and 60 excluding, so you are not counting 40 or 60, but theoretically you should be able to square 40 and 60 quite easily. Now, the rule for this one is a little odd. So the way it works is that the numbers between 40 to 60 falls under basically almost three categories, but I want to say two. It's either going to be numbers less than 50, or, you guessed it, numbers greater than 50, right? Of course, numbers equal 50, you should be able to do 50 squared fairly easily. Now, numbers less than 50, basically it's everything that is like 41 all the way until 49. And then, of course, numbers greater than 50 is basically 51 all the way until 59, right? So, depending on the situation, there's actually two set of rules that differ only very slightly. So what happens is that any number between 40 and 60 will fall under one of these two categories. Basically, it's going to be 50 minus some number if it's less than 50, or 50 plus some number that's greater than 50. So, what happens if it's less than 50? Let's just make sure this is red right here so you can see it, if it's less than 50. So the rule is, it's going to be 50 minus something to equal that number. To equal that number, right? That something is the key. This is what we want. Let's just make sure I point it out. What's going to happen is that you're going to have 25 minus the something. And in the end, right, you're going to, I guess, how you say, put, I don't want to say add because I feel like that could be misinterpreted like the previous video, right? Put something squared at the end. Okay, so for example, let's just say 47 squared. That's technically 50 minus 3, which is 47. We're not worried about the square, we're just looking at the inside number right here, right? So this something is 3. So what we're going to do is basically 25 minus 3, which is 22, and 3 squared is 9. But here's the catch, 0, 9. This is what I want you guys to put. So in the end, this is going to be 22, 0, 9, right? This right here is the square of this guy. Let's look at what happens when the number is bigger than 50. Now, when we look at a situation where the number is greater than 50, it's actually very similar to the previous rule. The only difference is this. First and foremost, numbers greater than 50 is going to be 50 plus something rather than subtract equals that number. Once again, the something is the most important part. What you're going to do is 25 plus something, and then afterwards you're going to put something squared at the end. So for example, 52 squared, right? That's technically 50 plus 2. The something in this case is just 2. Okay, that equals 52. And so what we're going to do is 25 plus 2, which is 27, and we're going to put something squared at the end. Something squared is basically 2 squared equals, and in this case, once again, the caveat is actually going to be 0, 4, right? Because normally we would just put 4 and that would be fine, but we want to put 0, 4. So in this case, it's going to be 2, 7, 0, 4. And just like that, that is 52 squared. All right, so we just have more problems. Let's just practice so that we can build a skill. Now, it's not complicated in any way, but of course, with more practice, you become a lot quicker, and therefore, it seems more magical or more amazing when you do it really quickly, right? 44 squared, once again, 44 is just 50 minus 6. That's our something right there, which is going to be 44. So we want 25 minus 6, which gives us what? 19, and then 6 squared equals 36. So our final answer is 1936, just like that. All right, this one is 50 plus 8, which is 58. That's what we want. 25 plus 8, and what is that? 33, right? 8 squared is 64, so therefore our final answer is 3364. For this one, second one, very quickly, right? Next one, fairly simple. 50 plus 6 equals 56, right? So once again, these are our sum things right here, so make sure we don't forget it, right? 25 plus 6 is 31. 6 squared is 36, so our final answer, 3136. Right, and the last one is going to be 50 minus 9, which is 41. So, what do we have? 25 minus 9, which is 16. 9 squared is 81. Ooh, bad penmanship, right? So, our final answer is 1681. And just like that, 4 problems solved super quick without a calculator. So at this point, if you don't really care at all on why it works, you just want to memorize the rule and go wow people, yes, go do it. Practice more, be super fast, so that when you do the quick calculation, they're just impressed by it. But those of you guys who are curious, this is why it works. There are several things we got to remember. First and foremost, we're looking at numbers between 40 to 60 only. That is it. Not subtraction, this is just 40 to 60, right? Now, the other thing that we did is that we differentiated. For the numbers less than 50, it was always 50 minus something, and we'll just call it n as a variable for some number. The other one is when it's greater than 50, we're looking at 50 plus n. Okay. Now, the key is that, once again, we're looking at 2 different situations, and we're squaring it. Okay. So what happens if we square it? Well, in this case, the top one, that's just going to be 2500 minus 100n plus n squared. I just factored out everything, right? You guys can break it down into 50 minus n right next to each other and then FOIL it out. The bottom one, same thing, except for it's going to be 2500 plus 100n plus n squared. Other than that, notice that they're almost identical. That's why, a lot of the rules seems very similar to each other. Now, here's the key. I'm going to start factoring things out. So here, notice that this ended in 2, 0. This ended in 2 zeros, 2, 0, 2, 0. So basically what I'm going to do is, you guys can guess it, right? I'm going to factor out 100. And I'm going to just combine it with the plus or minus. So it's going to look something like this. You have 100, right? I'm taking that out. What I have right here is going to be 25 plus or minus or plus, doesn't matter. Now, you normally see this in quadratics. It's not quadratics, but mainly when you see this, it's just combining 2 different scenarios, which is going to be the, top and bottom, or bottom and top in this case, right? It's plus or minus, doesn't matter in this case. But it's just combining 2 different scenarios so that you save space, okay? N right here plus n squared. Pretty cool, right? So basically, notice this. You have your 25, and sometimes you're going to add that number. Hence, the first rule that when it's greater than 50, it's 25 plus something, right? And because this is 100, and you have n squared, notice is either going to be a 1 or 2 digit number, right here. 1 or 2 digit. Okay? And therefore, that's why when you have that 25 plus something, if it's over 50, right? and then you add that 1 or 2 digit of that something squared, the n squared, you will get the answer. Same thing with the minus. If it's less than 50, then it's going to be 25 minus something plus the something squared. And once again, that something squared is still just going to be 1 to 2 digit. And the 100 guarantees that they don't like basically mash with each other. So it's always going to be the two ending parts. That's why you put it at the end. So let's just look at this really quickly. This was one example that we did before. 52 squared, once again, right? It's basically going to be 50 plus 2, right? The 2 is the something. So basically, let's just look at what happens if we put in 2 here. We're doing 25 plus 2 because once again, it's greater than 50, right? That's going to be 27. So this whole thing right here ends up being just 27. 27 times 100 is 2,700 plus n squared, or something, which is n, right? It's basically 2. Right? 2 squared is going to be plus 4. Or normally we put 0, 4 just so that we don't get it confused. And notice that's just 2,704. And just like that, that's where this rule comes from. That's why we have that weird situation where if it's greater than 50, you're going to add that something plus the something squared. And if it's less than 50, it's 25 minus the something and then plus the something squared, right? So that's why this rule works. You know, it's a little interesting scenario or situation, and therefore it makes something a little magical, a little easier. So yeah. All right, so we reached the end of this video. Now, yes, I am introducing some of the weird nuances, you know, like squaring of 5, now squaring of numbers between 40 and 60. And I do have a purpose of this. I really want you guys to see generalization, how generalization basically in terms of using variables form specific rules, and sometimes you can use that rule to make calculation a lot easier. So we built off with something fairly simple with just ending 5. Now we have 40 to 60. And hopefully in a future video, I'm going to generalize it even further so that it's a lot easier to square just any number. Now, here's the thing. Just because it makes it a lot easier doesn't mean that you can skimp out on basic arithmetic. Notice that something like this still requires you to be very quick in adding and subtracting and sometimes multiplying. So practice your skills in arithmetic. If you want to use this for fun to do super quick calculations, you still always have to have the basics down. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.